All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the newest Brad Thor thriller, and this is called Deadfall. This is book number 22 in the Scott Harvath thriller series by Brad Thor. One of my favorite thriller series of all time. Brad Thor being one of my favorite thriller writers of all time. In fact, I've got in my huge library here of over 5,000 some odd books. My entire Brad Thor collection is right there. And we've even got a few of those books signed by Brad Thor. And as I mention in every Brad Thor book review, I mention that I first met Brad Thor 20 some odd years ago. When he was first starting out as a writer, I went to a book signing in the Sugar House, Utah, Barnes & Noble, and I was the only guy that showed up at the signing. And Brad Thor took the time and talked to me for quite a bit about my own plans of becoming a writer and all that. And so just, a very cool guy. I imagine his book signings are probably have a lot more people at them nowadays than they did back when he first started. But, hey, I'm a new author too, and I've been to some of those signings where there's a lot of people, and then I've been to some of those signings where nobody shows up. Nobody comes in to buy a book. It is what it is. All right, so let's get to it. Let's talk about the covers first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration. And the Brad Thor novels always seem to have pretty flashy, colorful covers, and I've always liked what, Atria Books does with them. Emily Bestler Books publishes all the Brad Thor novels. Always got sharp-looking covers, so A+ on that. So, Scott Harvath, ex-Navy SEAL, now he's getting older. He's been doing 22 adventures. That was a long time. He's been doing this for a while. He's been playing James Bond for quite some time. And I like the fact that Brad Thor started to show Harvath and the realities of getting older, especially as a spy, as a Navy SEAL, as a kick-ass guy. Maybe he's not as athletic as he once was. That was pretty cool. Well, I don't know if it's cool. I relate. That's all I'm saying. I relate. I used to be a kick-ass guy myself. And as you can tell, I have let myself go. Anyway, so, terrifying opening in the Ukrainian-Russian war, in an orphanage, real war crimes happening, and my heart was pounding from the beginning because Brad Thor was putting us right into the middle of a situation that's going on in the world right now, and that is the war in Ukraine. And puts us in a situation that we don't want to see. We don't want to see what happens to orphanages during wartime, or the people that take care of the orphans. And it's pretty brutal, and it makes you angry, and it makes you want to just kick someone's ass. He got my emotions going. He really got my emotions going, which made this probably one of my favorite Brad Thor novels to date, because I felt seriously emotionally invested in just war crimes that are still happening in our day and age, which just shouldn't be. It's just bananas. So, he starts off with that prologue, and it's just chilling. And then we kind of get into the Scott Harvath and what are the Americans really doing, and how did the Russian invasion of Ukraine start, what got it started, how Americans have reacted to it, how Russian internet, social media, and meddling and influence peddling and all of that stuff has gone on with administration after administration. And there's a mercenary group. The Russian army is bad enough. But then there's a mercenary group within the Russian army that has gone rogue. And they are the ones causing all of this terror in Ukraine, where they are specifically targeting women and children and doing the unspeakable. And I won't speak it. You can read it in the book. It is horrifying. And as you read in the afterword that Brad Thor provides, he based this mercenary group off of a real mercenary group that exists, that is doing these things in the Ukraine as we speak. Made me even more angry at the world in general. Scott Harvath, this mercenary group is going from village to village, just raining terror upon the Ukrainians, the innocent Ukrainians. All of the Ukrainian men are off fighting the wars. And so a lot of the hospitals, orphanages, schools, just villages in general, are left with very few men to guard them. And it's just women and children. And this is what this, chicken shit mercenary group targets. And so not only that, but there's another group of Russians that are out, these other teams of Russians that are just out going through Ukraine, just stealing artifacts and artwork and precious things, and just thieving everything. And so we've got these kind of things going on. And in comes our man, Scott Harvath, to settle the score, to save the day. This is basically where he's being thrust into this adventure. And it is quite an adventure. Quite an adventure. Chilling, heartbreaking, heartrending. Makes your blood boil just realizing that this kind of nonsense is still going on. And Brad Thor makes a point of saying, he always liked those. He was a World War II buff. He loved thrillers that were set in World War II, and he'd always kind of wanted to write a thriller like that. And he's like, I feel kind of bad because I am writing this is my kind of World War II-esque thriller based off of a war in Europe that is just, almost like World War II, that is so unfortunate that it's happening, but it is the basis of his novel. One of the things that I liked that kind of stuck out, and I don't know why I like these little nuggets, and I appreciate Brad Thor for putting this in here, but, there's a sign and counter sign. Remember in World War II when the American soldiers it was dark or something, and they didn't want to alert themselves to the enemy, but they would do this flash thunder thing. Like if they saw some soldiers, they would yell out flash, and if the soldier yelled back thunder from the distance, then you knew you had an ally out there. And so he kind of does this call sign thing, but they use Ken Follett novels. It's kind of like he's like, hey, Ken Follett, I love Pillars of the Earth, the best. And they're like, no, that's not Eye of the Needle. They're like, Pillars of the Earth, Eye of the Needle. That's kind of the way they call. I thought that was clever, funny. I just sort of a inside thriller buff. People that read thriller novels are gonna love that kind of thing, and I love that kind of thing. Overall, like I said, Brad Thor, one of my favorites of all time. Scott Harvath series, one of my favorites of all time. And this is probably one of the best, if not the best. I think Lions of Lucerne was probably my favorite. That was the first one. And then his latest one, just up there with the first one. Absolute dynamite. This book is absolute dynamite. And so powerful and filled with just, I don't know, it made me angry. Just made me angry to know that we're still dealing with these kind of wars and these kind of people. Pointless. It's so pointless. And just causing chaos for no reason. I'm getting angry just thinking about it. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.